There's many great drivers that have come along in NASCAR and left their mark. You got the all-time greats who have tons of championships and piled up a lot of wins over their careers. Drivers like Jeff Gordon, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt Sr., and Jimmie Johnson. Then you got those great drivers who had successful careers but fell short of being one of the all-time greats. Drivers that got about 40 to 50 career wins and maybe got a championship to their racing resume. One of those drivers is Rusty Wallace. Rusty was a driver that knew he was destined for success. As a professional athlete, you're supposed to believe that you're the best out there. Not every athlete goes around shouting to the world that they're the best, but Rusty was one of those guys that wasn't afraid to tell you just how damn good he was. And he wasn't wrong. Rusty Wallace was that damn good. He was a short track ace, racking up 25 wins at that track type. He was also a great road course racer, winning 6 times at those tracks. He was a hard-nosed racer, didn't take any crap and approached every race like he was about to get in a boxing ring. He had the confidence of a Mike Tyson when it came to his ability behind the wheel. Rusty Wallace quickly established himself in the Cup Series. After coming off a 6-win season in 1988 and finishing runner-up to Bill Elliott in the championship, Rusty Wallace proceeded to come back the very next year and win the 1989 championship, just beating out his close rival Dale Earnhardt Sr. Going into the 90s, Rusty expected him and Earnhardt to dominate that entire decade, and halfway through the 90s, it was going that way. Dale Earnhardt racked up 4 more championships, and even though Rusty Wallace didn't win another championship, he did pile up a lot of wins. The 2 notable seasons where he went on the absolute tear was 1993 where he got 10 wins, and 1994 scoring 8 victories. It was definitely the Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace show for about half a decade, but Rusty started to face some hurdles about a decade into his career. These hurdles involved the future. From about the mid-80s to mid-90s, things for Rusty was pretty consistent besides going from Bluebacks racing to Team Penske. Rusty was one of the top guys in NASCAR. He was a consistent winner, winning multiple races in a year and was always among one of the favorites to win the championship. Rusty was always a one-man show. He didn't have teammates. He didn't want teammates. Everything that Rusty Wallace was familiar with started to change. Rusty struggled with the future. Jealousy, not being able to adapt, and regret. All of these things creeped up on Rusty Wallace from the middle to back end of his career, and it all started when a young kid named Jeff Gordon came in and took the NASCAR world by storm. Jeff Gordon came in and quickly became the guy in NASCAR. He won a championship in his 3rd season and proceeded to win 3 more in a short time span. He dethroned Dale Earnhardt, who was collecting just about all of the championships throughout the 90s until Gordon showed up. I've seen some drivers over the years where they'll continuously get bested by a certain driver. Matt Kenseth was Casey Kane's kryptonite. Seemed like whenever these two were battling for wins, Kenseth always got the best of Casey. Then you look at Matt Kenseth, who kryptonite was Jimmie Johnson. Whether it was for race wins or championships, Jimmie Johnson always got the best of Matt Kenseth. With Rusty Wallace, it was always Jeff Gordon that got the best of him so many times over the years. Eventually, Rusty grew jealous of Jeff Gordon, and that showed in the spring Richmond race in 1998. It seemed like Rusty was on his way to another victory at Richmond, but here's Jeff Gordon closing in, and eventually Gordon would get to Rusty's outside. It's looking like another win that Gordon is about to take from Rusty, but that didn't end up being the case as Rusty Wallace hit the left rear of Jeff Gordon's car, which sent him into the wall. And this wasn't an accident. Rusty made the corner, his car was planted, he just proceeded to turn right in the middle of the corner. Rusty said in his interview that it was hard racing, but he knew exactly what he was doing in that moment. Jealousy got the best of Rusty, and what's funny about that incident is that it lit a fuse under Jeff Gordon and his 24 team, as Gordon went on to finish either 1st or 2nd 15 times in the last 20 races. 20 consecutive top 10s and 17 consecutive top 5s, and of course topped it off with a championship. Meanwhile, Rusty Wallace proceeded to win 1 race that year. What's interesting is that shortly after Jeff Gordon came on the scene and became the guy, Rusty Wallace only had 1 more season in his career where he won multiple races in a season. Jeff Gordon, on the other hand, went on to have one of the most dominant runs in the modern era in NASCAR. It was many more moments between Gordon and Rusty after that Richmond 98 incident. Rusty Wallace had the dominant car in the 1999 Daytona 500 but loses to Jeff Gordon, who made one of the most riskiest passes to win a Daytona 500. In 2001 at Richmond, funny enough, they had another incident where Rusty ran Gordon up the racetrack on a late race restart. Then of course the 2002 Bristol night race where Gordon moved Rusty out of the way to win. Very reminiscent of the Bristol 1997 race. Rusty Wallace unfortunately coming out on the losing end once again. Rusty just didn't like Gordon. Gordon came in and stole Rusty Wallace's thunder. Jeff Gordon was the future of NASCAR and built a dynasty. Around that same time period, it was another hurdle that came at Rusty's way: teammates. Rusty Wallace wasn't a fan of having teammates. He wasn't really a team player. He viewed having teammates to benefit him and him only. I remember listening to the Dale Jr. download and Jeremy Mayfield was a guest on there, and he talked about his time being teammates with Rusty Wallace, and something that Jeremy said that raised our eyebrow was that he was told by Rusty that he was there to help the two team win the championship.
Rusty came to me one day, I think in '98, and he said, at Pocono, and he said, the 12 car is to do nothing but help the 2 car win a championship. You know, and I started this deal, and I created this deal, and I can end this deal. That's what he told me. And I'm leading the points. We're first in the points, and he's telling me this, and he's like 5th. I'm thinking, you know, at that point in time, you tell a driver who basically didn't really care what Rusty thought about, you know, at that time, you know, I really didn't, you know, I was just racing and want to be a racer, you know.
So he wasn't a guy you wanted to be teammates with. Rusty was kind of like how Lightning McQueen was in the beginning of Cars 1. He was a one-man show. Rusty just couldn't fathom being teammates with someone, especially if that teammate started to outperform him. Jeremy Mayfield never outperformed Rusty, but it was a guy named Ryan Newman that did just that. When Ryan Newman came onto the scene, Rusty Wallace was pretty much past his glory days and barely hanging on. Newman was part of the many young guns that came into the sport in the early 2000s and was having instant success. 2003 is the year Newman really broke out, scoring 8 wins and 11 poles. Meanwhile, we were seeing Rusty Wallace at his lowest, 14th in points and only managed to get 2 top 5s that same year. Rusty was past his prime, but it was obviously a big gap in performance between the 12 and the 2 team. Rusty Wallace always had the mentality of doing things his way and his way only, and Newman challenged him on that. They didn't see eye to eye and it led to them never sharing notes with each other. They had one on-track incident with each other, and that was at the 2004 Fall Martinsville race. Surprisingly, they didn't have more incidents like this. You can tell they pissed off Rusty so much that his teammate was going out there kicking ass every week while he ran mediocre, especially when you think about how Rusty always thought the team revolved around him. He was a one-man show for so long, and when he finally got a teammate that outran him and went against his way of thinking, I'm 100% positive that it bothered him a lot. Rusty came from a time period where having teammates was very uncommon, but as the years went on, lots of organizations learned that having multiple cars helped race teams. But you had drivers like Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Rusty Wallace who struggled to adapt having teammates. While Ryan Newman was having success, Rusty went winless in 2002 and 2003, and around that time period, he started to have people approach him, asking him how much longer would he continue to race. Rusty was confused as to why he was getting these questions, and with more and more people asking him about retirement, it really made Rusty think about it, and eventually he pulled the trigger and announced in 2004 that 2005 will be his last year as a Cup Series driver. One of the mistakes you don't want to make is retiring too soon. You want to make sure you get the racing bug completely out of your system so you won't have any regrets. But unfortunately for Rusty, this is the mistake that he made. Retirement snuck up on Rusty pretty fast and he wasn't prepared for it. His future was going to be involved with broadcasting, but he wasn't ready to get out of a race car. Rusty expressed on the Dale Jr. download that he wished he raced until 2008, and it took him a while to get over his decision to get out of a race car so soon. It just seemed like the future for Rusty Wallace from the mid-90s all the way until retirement was something that didn't go as well for him, when it came to the NASCAR side at least. No, it's not like he lost his ride, faced any injuries, or fell off a complete cliff when it came to his performance, but it was constant hurdles that came into Rusty's NASCAR career and challenged him. Here's Rusty calling his shot to dominate the 90s, and then Jeff Gordon appears and took the glory away from him. His known struggles with having teammates, and then retiring so soon as a Cup Series driver. I thought this would be an interesting topic to cover about Rusty Wallace, and I just want to say that I'm not bashing Rusty Wallace at all. I'm a fan of his, and I think he deserves more praise, to be honest. But it just seemed like after a decade of not facing any hurdles in his NASCAR career, the future really challenged him later on. And yeah, I get that a lot of drivers face hurdles throughout their careers, but it seemed like when it came to Rusty, it was constant and it was very noticeable compared to other drivers. But with all that being said, at the end of the day, Rusty Wallace has gone down as a great NASCAR driver. 55 career wins, a championship, and one of the more interesting characters in NASCAR. I got a few questions for y'all. Do you feel like Rusty Wallace would have had a better career had Jeff Gordon never came along? What's your thoughts on Rusty as a teammate? And let's just say that he did race until 2008. How you think he would have done during those extra couple of years? Leave your comments and I'll definitely be checking them out. I'm gonna go ahead and roll up out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.